cybersecurity webinar, Gone Phishing, Defending Your Organization Against Social Engineering. Joining me this morning are our presenters. It'll be Tyler Mills and David Mills, and we'll talk a little bit more about those guys here in a second. I do want to go through some housekeeping items that we've got. The first thing, the most important thing, has to do with CPE. That's why a lot of us are here. We want to get some good information, but we want to get some CPE credit out of that as well. So we are going to give you an hour of CPE credit for this session. There are a couple of things that we need to do in order to get that CPE credit that NASBA requires of us. We're going to have some things called poll questions we're going to give you during this session. There'll be 7 of those, and we need you to show your participation in the course by responding and answering to 80% of those poll questions, all right? And so the way that you'll do that, over on your right-hand side of your screen, you should, in your control panel, there should be a place there where you can ask us questions, you can feed those in, but we'll prompt the poll questions for you, and you can answer the poll questions as they come in. I'll be launching those and taking care of those, okay? So again, right-hand side of your screen, ask questions that you want to do. That's not part of the CPE process, but ask your questions as you've got those coming in. We'll make sure that Tyler and David get those, and we'll address those. There's also there on the right-hand side of your screen in the control panel a section for handouts, and you'll see the slides that we've got there. Our marketing folks are also going to email the slides out to everybody within 24 hours of this webinar. You can see that there on the slide, but we've got the handouts there available for download in the control panel as well. All right. With that, we're going to go ahead and get into our first poll question. This is one, again, that is required for NASBA to make sure that we know who is taking this for CPE credit. This is one of those kind of, I guess, technical things that we've got to do. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to launch this, and you can see how this the poll question works. You just answer your question there, and I'll show the results of that here in just a second. And we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to make sure they can get their answers in. All right, are you attending this webinar to receive CPE credit? Just yes or no. All right, we'll give everybody just a few seconds. Again, I'm monitoring the volume of the answers as they come in. We want to give everybody a chance to get that in so they can get their CPE credit for answering the questions. All right, looks like it's just about stopped coming in, so I'll close that, share the results. This is how that will look. You'll be able to see the results of each of the questions as we go through, and Tyler and Dave will discuss our answers as we get into the more technical questions of those. So, all right, so with that, we'll go on. Let's look at our presenters for today. First, this is me. I'm the assurance service line leader here at CRI. I'm upset with our marketing department because they could not have found a better picture of me, but we'll deal with that later. So again, appreciate these guys for letting me take the time to do this today. All right, our next presenter is David Mills. David is the director of our IT assurance practice here at CRI. He's a great guy and has got a lot of experience in the IT assurance area there. You can see all of those wonderful certifications he's got there at the top, and he's got a lot of good information for you today. The next is Tyler. Tyler as well is part of our IT assurance practice, does a lot of good work for us. And again, these guys have got a great amount of information for you today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jimmy. I appreciate that. And I thought that picture was pretty good of you. So there you go. I'd like to welcome everybody today. This is actually going to be a 3-part series of webinars for social engineering. And we're going to be taking a deep dive into social engineering. This webinar today is going to talk a little bit about the evolution and the beginning of social engineering so that you've got a background on it. I think that a lot of times this helps when you're actually trying to defend yourself, is to kind of understand how this originated and how these things take place, so that you're better equipped to actually not fall victim to them. The second series is going to be about the different types of social engineering. We'll get into a little bit more technical aspects there. kind of what's involved, who's the target, how well does it work. We're also going in the third and final series, we're going to talk a little bit about why do people still fail this testing. Well, there's a lot of psychology behind the good, really good social engineering attacks, and also want to kind of talk a little bit about training for an attack. And then to wind that up in that particular session, we're going to talk about the incident response to a social engineering attack, which is really a key aspect in making sure that these things are isolated and don't propagate as well as the attacker would like them to propagate. So with that, we'll get cranked up a little bit on the social engineering history. Now, one of the things that is, that is really interesting about social engineering is that it is really an old story. If you think about it, this even goes back to the Greeks and the original Trojan horse story. This was a social engineer that actually laid the groundwork for the horse to actually be accepted as a gift and not as an attack. What's interesting about this is they left a single person, behind to inform the Trojans that it was that this horse was an offering to the goddess Athena. To atone for all the wrongdoings that the Greeks had done to the Trojans. The Greeks really went even a little step further. They even acted as if they were sailing away to really enhance the credibility of this pretext. Now, I kind of want to stop a little bit here and say pretext is the key and most essential part of a social engineering attack. So you're going to hear that word kind of over and over again. But literally, they had a pretext of this horse being a gift to the goddess Athena. So obviously, you all know the story. After the Trojans accepted the gift, 30 of the Greeks' finest warriors kind of came out and wreaked havoc and decimated the city. This is so profound in its meaning in social engineering that there's even malware named for this. Obviously you guys have heard of Trojans, something that appears to be one thing, but when it actually is inside of it, something different. And so, these are the kind of things that started a lot of this. And there's many examples of this type of thing. From that particular aspect. So talk a little bit more about the Greeks here. Tyler, if you can switch the slide there to the Greeks, if you would.
I think we got a poll question coming up next actually.
Okay. Well, let's have a poll question then.
We do have a poll question. All right, let me go ahead and get that launched.
And remember, this is to get the CPE credit, so don't forget to put some info in there.
Well, that's right. So the question is what is one of the oldest recorded instances of social engineering that is also a name for a type of computer virus? Is it A, lone Greek, B, Trojan horse, C, ransomware, or D, phishing?
I'll give you one clue. I don't think they spelled fishing with a P back in the day.
We've got a few folks that have had some technical questions, some issues with the software that are typing some questions in. We've got our marketing folks behind the scenes that are working on that and trying to help with those issues. So let us know if you're having something of that nature. If you've also got questions related to the content that you want us to ask, you want me to get to David and Tyler, let me know and we'll get these guys to answer those questions for everybody.
Sure thing.
All right. So we still got some answers. Well, we're still got some answers coming in. Looks like we're slowing down now. Again, I remind everybody that you've got to answer 80% of the questions to get CPE credit if you're trying to do that. So I'll go ahead and close it. Looks like we've just about stopped, and we'll share the answers. And so it looks like 95% said Trojan horse.
Outstanding. That is the correct answer. So, and we're going to kind of continue on with this because there's a couple of interesting things I did want to talk about here. You know, as I was thinking about this, you know, one of the things that a social engineer, you know, really has to have is a great deal of confidence. And, you know, this is going to be a person that is trying to sell a story to a group of people, you know, that have just been, you know, in a war. I always think, you know, what did this guy look like? What, you know, was he, you know, was he small? Was he large? Was he, you know, was he handsome? Was he mature? What, you know, what did he look like? You know, was he a local official that was bribed by the Greeks, you know, to do this? Was it a Greek that maybe had sort of had seen the error of his ways? Most likely, though, I think that this guy probably had some sort of title, some sort of standing in that community, because, you know, they've got somebody actually had to do this that would elicit enough trust in the Trojans to actually fall for this and nobody question it. So if you think about this word pretext, well, you know, what was the pretext? Well, it was a gift to honor a god. Now, you know, back then, obviously, Athena was a pretty big deal, and no Trojan would have dishonored the god by saying, oh, that we're not going to accept this gift that is specifically for this particular god that they had. So there's a pretext behind this, and that's what I want to drive home, is that, you know, not just anybody off the street could come in and have sold this to the Trojans. So it has to be a social engineer, has to be somebody that can elicit some sort of trust, some sort of confidence, things like that. So as we kind of work through this history, I want you to sort of really understand the pretexts behind most of these successful, you know, social engineers. So if we move a little bit forward here into the 1960s,
Hold on.
you'll see.
Hold on, we got another one. Hold on.
Jimmy?
Yep, we got
Yeah,
another
we're gonna do a poll question regarding the story of the Greeks.
Got it.
All right. What was the main strategy of the Greeks? Was it A, give the Trojans a gift, B, steal a Trojan's identity, C, create a sense of urgency, or D, war driving? We'll give everybody a few minutes to answer that.
It would have been difficult to drive that horse around looking for wireless access points. So
that is correct. We do have, again, 7 of these total poll questions over the course of the hour. So we try to break them up in between stories there to keep everybody on their toes. All right, we've got a lot of folks on the webinar this morning, so the questions or the answers are coming in. They're just a little slow. We want to make sure everybody gets the opportunity to answer those.
Yeah, I will say that I imagine that fellow that brought in the original pretext was waiting on those guys to come out of that horse. If I suspect he probably went back in the horse, you know, when that thing started to materialize. Because if not, I suspect he was one of the first ones that were dealt with.
All right, let's close it. We'll share results. And a little bit of a mixed answers here, David. So we got 42% say give the Trojans a gift, and 31% say war driving.
There you go. So so evidently the war driving part was feasible back in the in that day and time. So let's go a little bit farther here, back up into the 1960s. We'll kind of get a little bit more recent. A lot of you probably have seen the movie about Frank Abegnale. He was a social engineer that literally convinced the Pan Am staff, along with a whole lot of other people, that he was a commercial pilot. So what kind of started this was he used a pretext that he was a school newspaper journalist. Now, what he did is he gathered a lot of information about Pan Am's policies, procedures. He learned the terminology, you know, and the terminology is really a key aspect in a social engineering attack. And so he took the time to do that. He took that knowledge and Pan Am pilot's uniform and literally just jetted all around the world free of charge. I think we all know that story. He even knew enough about this. Now, what's interesting to me is I think he got to a point where he thought, well, how can I monetize this? And so today, you know, it's monetized oftentimes by ransomware. In this case, he was able to actually learn enough through phone calls, probably talking to people in the pilots' lounges, all of that about the Pan Am banking process to even cash payroll checks. So he did a lot of work, and kind of what we're gearing toward is that a successful social engineering attack requires a lot of work up front by the social engineer. So it's not something that is you just go off and decide I'm going to be a pilot and walk around and all of a sudden it's done. You know, you have to learn the lingo. You have to have the right uniform. You've got to be able to talk with other pilots and crew, and it really is a very difficult thing to get right. Now, the thing is if a social engineer, you know, sort of looks, acts, and sounds the part that they're trying to play, it's pretty likely that people will take them at face value and not even question the pretext any further. Now, obviously today, you know, this wouldn't work. You know, that was back, if any of you can remember, that was back when you could walk into an airport and walk straight out to the airplane without going through any real security checks. All they really were concerned about was, did you have a ticket? And so it was a much easier thing to do back then, but it still required a lot of work and effort on his part to actually get through that. Now, one of the things I wanted to bring up here is we know a little bit more about him, you know, from a personal perspective. You know, he was extremely confident and very charismatic. And so he really, if you think about it, he had kind of three stages to his attack. The first, he acted like a high school journalist to learn the process and the lingo. And you know, a lot of times the folks that are victims of this don't even know that they are just simply a stage in an attack process. So you know, the people that were giving him this information as he was posing as a something for the high school newspaper probably weren't even aware of what they were doing. They were just trying to help what they thought was a kid out write a good paper for his school, or write a good story for his school paper. So they probably didn't even understand that this, or I know they didn't understand that this was the step one of a procedural attack. Now, if you think about his second level, he obviously was looking at a or trying to portray himself as a commercial pilot. Well, you know, if you're super confident, you know, I know that that's kind of what I'm looking for in a pilot, right? You want somebody that is very confident of their abilities. They make you feel better about everything when you're boarding an airplane. So his personality would go right along with what somebody out there would really want to see in a pilot. He understood the lingo, remember, and he was super friendly. So everybody liked him. and that came in contact with him. So he had the personality to complete this second phase of his attack, which was in fact to basically ride as a passenger in the aircraft to get wherever he wanted to go. Well, his third step was to then take his social engineering and monetize it. And had he not done that, he may still be flying around, obviously not with the security checks today, but this is actually when things started to get very serious. That he learned the process, obviously from talking to a lot of people about what the checks looked like. He probably even saw a few of those. He was learning how to cash the checks. And if you think about it now, when a pilot walks in to let's say a bank or anything else in the uniform, obviously they instill this confidence. And so, so this was just kind of played right into this. So he was successful in even completing that third phase of this, which is to monetize what they're doing. Now, this all took a lot of time to do this. So he spent a world of time in preparing for this and actually learning how to be a part of this process. So just again, a huge amount of time to actually pull this off. So is there a poll question next, or are we ready can we go ahead?
There is, but I wanted to
Okay.
I wanted to step in and just say what's really interesting about the case, the Frank Abagnale case as a whole, is that he really used a lot of different kinds of a pretext is a good word, but a lot of different strategies that you would normally you would see someone use a single strategy, but he kind of he instilled confidence. He created a sense of urgency when he was trying to cash his Pan Am checks. And he's really known, and a lot of people, if you've seen the movie, a big part of why he actually ended up getting caught was because of his check forgery. But in order to make that work, he had to make sure that the people who were cashing it believed he was who he said he was, and that they felt that they needed to quickly help him. So those are two very, very important strategies. But his main one was obviously, he was a con man. He was trying to get everybody to believe he was who he said. And yes, we do have a poll question coming up.
Okay. Jimmy?
Okay. What was the main strategy of Frank Abagnale? Was it to create a sense of urgency, identity theft, instill confidence in targets, or random phone calls?
So this one's a little bit of a tough one because if you remember, he used a lot of different strategies, but of course there's one main one that he used throughout his career.
Yeah, this guy was pretty interesting, and it kind of shows you what what kind of personality that you need to actually be successful in this. The problem is that you end up really liking the guy that pulled this off because he is so friendly. Jimmy, how's it looking?
Oh, they're coming in. They're kind of slow
Good
coming in.
deal.
So we want to give
Good
everybody a
deal.
chance to get that.
If there's any younger folks on the call, the movie's called Catch Me If You Can. It's a Steven Spielberg movie. It's really, really good. Leonardo DiCaprio's in it, so if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Tom Hanks also is the agent trying to catch him, so it's really, really good.
All right, we'll go ahead and close it, share the results. It looks like
Good deal.
67% said instill confidence
Yeah.
in targets.
So this is actually a really interesting spread for these poll answers. Instill confidence in targets was my intended answer. But he did create a sense of urgency with a great way to get people to believe you is to sort of make them think that it might be a problem if they don't act quickly. And that's what we mean by create a sense of urgency. So he certainly did that. And really and truly, impersonation of a Pan Am pilot, you could really kind of consider that identity theft, even though he made no claims to be anyone but himself. But yeah, that could absolutely be a correct answer.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, so let's go forward a little bit in time, and we'll move into go into 1971, and just for some history here, if you didn't know it, 1971 was the first email that was actually sent. Little did they know that it would create an attack vector for social engineers that was going to be exploited with an unbelievable amount of attempts. So if you kind of think about things here before we get into Kevin, social engineering really includes obviously a great deal of communication types, and I'm going to get into that a little bit here in just a second. But that communication, if you think about it, certainly can be one-on-one communications, which obviously Frank did quite a bit, and the poor guy from the Greeks did a lot of one-on-one. I'm sure, and I know there was a good deal of phone conversations that took place there with Frank Abegnale. He would use that extensively to contact people in the Pan Am offices. Now, again, a lot of things have changed. They didn't have obviously caller ID back then, but it's a form of communication. The other is a fax. At one time, fax fraud was fairly prevalent because we took a fax as the gospel. And to this day, we still think that fax is probably a little more secure than email, which I don't disagree with. Obviously, with the onset of the internet, we've got email that we can communicate with. We've got chat. We've still got the old phone that still works, but the internet really introduced a ton of new communication paths. And with a new communication path, it always it can be used for a part of a social engineering attack. So it's all about getting someone to respond. So as we move into Kevin's story and then into some communications, we'll talk about that a little bit further. So Kevin Mitnick, obviously you guys have out there have heard of him in most cases. Excuse me. He's probably one of the most famous social engineers that has been around. At 12 years old, he did a lot of dumpster diving and used transfer slips from the LA bus system. Also talked a bus driver into understanding where he could buy a punch for the tickets, and basically rode the LA bus system for free all over the place. And so that was his first introduction into social engineering, and it obviously worked pretty well for him. Now, back then, there was a lot of cost involved in phone long distance phone calls, and so there was a good bit of what people used to call PH phreaking, which was to try to steal long distance. And back then, the phone company obviously, and they still do, used a lot of things to facilitate a phone call long distance, which was through their switches. Well, Mitnick was able to do, again, back to his dumpster diving days. He was able to actually retrieve a ton of documents, old manuals, diagrams, and all kinds of other technical information about the phone company and how their switching mechanism worked. Well, he was really doing this to try to get or provide free long distance. That was his main goal. And so he really took social engineering into the electronic age by learning the equipment. So where Frank learned the pilot lingo, Kevin really was on the technical side of things and learned how the switches operate. So he was able to make calls into the phone company and route calls because he was acting as if he was a switch operator at another phone company location. So he also used kind of a new technique for electronics. He said he would always start his many of his calls by saying, "Hey, I'm IT support, and we see a problem with your system. I'm here to help you." So again, you got to remember back then, this was, back in the day when computers were still just mystical. They were the thought of as something that nobody really understood. So if there was a problem, the user automatically thought it was super serious and was willing to let anybody help them. That could. So this was an easy pretext to allow them to or allow Kevin to actually get additional information or even control of a switch. So, this is still going on today. There's a lot of social engineering out there where they're calling you and saying, "Hey, I recognize a problem on your computer. Let me, go to this website and let me help you." And so the folks that have kind of come up a little bit with computers understand, just how kind of ridiculous that probably is. But the vast majority of people still don't see it as being a ridiculous concept. And so it makes us very vulnerable to this. If you think about the time it took Mitnick to do this, it was years. So again, these very successful social engineering attacks don't just occur within minutes of being conceptualized. It takes months, even years, to actually pull one of these things off that's very destructive or very lucrative. So the next thing I kind of want to talk about is this idea of communications being used in the social.
Hold the phone. We got a poll question about Kevin Mitnick.
It's a poll question. All right. So Jimmy, launch another one.
It's another poll question. All right. What was the main strategy of Kevin Mitnick? Was it A, identity theft, B, confidence work, C, dumpster diving, or D, impersonating his boss over the phone?
While y'all are answering that, quick piece of trivia about Phreaking. The reason why Apple computers exist is because Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were trying to get together to come up with a machine people could buy that would allow them to do that at home. So the iPhone wouldn't exist without that concept.
So that's an unexpected turn, but
yeah,
but,
a little ironic.
I guess
yes.
it's a form of innovation.
Absolutely.
But thank goodness it actually occurred. But yeah, that was a big deal back in the day. Was getting allowing free phone access to long distance. A lot of people were involved in that. I think that's where the Ghost in the Wires. There's a book out there called The Ghost in the Wires that is that talks about that quite a bit.
It's interesting to think about how that was handled. And it's been so long since that was, but when I was a kid, of how big of a worry that was if you accidentally called somebody long distance, how much money that would end up costing you or something like that. And it's just to think about that. That's not even a thing. You don't even think about that anymore.
Yep. A lot of this has changed because of those reasons.
Mm-hmm. And again, the dumpster diving was my intended answer here, because that's how he kind of got his start, was going through documents and making sure that he understood the ins and outs of what he was trying, or where he was trying to get in. But That takes a lot. That takes a lot of confidence. Again, that makes some sense. And potentially, he probably did at least once claim to be someone that wasn't Kevin Mitnick. So identity theft works here too.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm always fascinated that the tenacity of these folks and just how successful they would have been had they tried to do it legitimately. Obviously, obviously had the talent and technique to probably do that as well. So anyway, back to this idea of communications and social engineering. So if you think about the communications that were used by obviously the poor guy that the Greeks left, behind, that was no doubt a one-to-one. A lot of hey, here's why this is here. This is what those folks told me, and you guys need to enjoy this great gift. Abegnale, obviously a lot of one-on-one. Some certainly phone. I believe he also used fax there toward the end, if I'm not mistaken. And so you can kind of see this progressing into the different communication channels. When you get to Kevin Mitnick, obviously, he was one-on-one fax, but then there's some things that got introduced, at that time, email. At that time, there were bulletin boards, chat, still during his time, but again, they're starting to use all these modes of communications. And if you think about it too, they can be stepping stones. So you may start out with an email. It may result in some sort of a chat. It may then result back to a phone call, to get you to do certain things. And so all these communication tools are part of this social engineering process. So when I say that, I'm hoping everybody is taking away that it's not just email that's part of social engineering. It's a lot of different, and basically all the different communication methods. If you think of just a plain old confidence man, what all is they use to actually to do what they do. It may not be super technical, but it's still all about communication. There was a great movie a few years back called The Sting, in which they did a great job of showing how all of this communication works. Also, the amount of people that may be involved in a successful social engineering campaign. The bottom line here is they all are going to have a pretext. So how they execute that pretext, within that particular communications path really is what's going to make it believable. And the more believable it is, the higher the success rate that this social engineering attack will have. I want to talk a little bit now about how this grew. So, the internet itself just created an unbelievable set of circumstances for people to communicate. In addition to that, it made it very easy to communicate across the globe. And so it did improve, it improved all the communication, but it also grew the social engineering and the attacks that come across from these communication paths. So we've seen, as the internet has grown, we've also seen phenomenal growth of social engineering, and it shows no signs of slowing down. And so we think about back in 1971, that first email that was sent, and where we are today. It just means that with any communication method, a social engineer will try to capitalize on it. And so that's kind of from the communications and the growth path. That's why we are where we are today with the level of social engineering that goes on in our day-to-day lives.
There's, the communication, and I just want to step in and say that I think the communication is key, but the internet has also made it possible for these attackers to find this information, to tailor their attacks to specific people or entities. A lot of that information that would have been more difficult to find before the internet and Facebook and all that existed is now much more readily available. It's not as it's not as difficult for them to come up with that stuff. And the internet's also made it a lot easier to function or act anonymously or act as impersonate somebody else. People are a lot more skeptical of especially now, but people are a lot more skeptical of folks meeting face to face. Even over the phone, it's a little bit harder to pretend that you're someone you're not on the internet. You don't ever hear the person, you don't see them. So it makes it a lot easier for those people to to get in there.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I mean, it really has made it much easier to develop targets and to actually really expand the target, the amount of targets that's even available to them. So yeah, I absolutely agree. It's been a phenomenal set of growth for it, and even though it's been great for other things, it's certainly left this wide open. So if we think a little bit about what kind of social engineering or what kind of things that occur in the attacker and the types of attacks that we see, it really, for me, kind of falls into two categories. One is what I call just a standard, internet social engineer. I mean, we're all familiar with the prince that needs to move his money, from one place to another. But the problem is he needs you to send him some money to actually move the money. And that still is working in some cases. So I refer to those types of attacks as sort of a kind of a lazy social engineering or what I call a drive-by attack. And what it is it doesn't require a whole lot of effort on the social engineer's part. And obviously they're not real concerned about it because in most cases there'll be misspellings. There'll be words that are used incorrectly. There'll be a lot of clues as to this really doesn't sound like who this person is supposed to be. But it still works. There are a lot of attacks that are successful just by this occurring. This kind of attack basically targets emails, and it'll be a huge amount of emails. And really, if you think about it, it's not hard to create this kind of attack. You just simply can take a dictionary with all the names, regular names of people in it, and put the domain name beside them. So you've got, Alice at apple.com, Andrea at apple.com. You can send out 1 million of these things. Some will be legit emails, some won't. So that's kind of the premise of this drive-by social engineering aspect. Now, it's gotten a little better, and we're going to talk about this, the different types of attacks when we do our second stage of this. But it's gotten a little better because now the drive-bys are a lot of times trying to get you to click on things within the email. It may be that something as simple as the package has been delayed. Click here to get a current status, that kind of thing. And so it's still, sort of that lazy social engineer that is pretty prevalent out there. Tyler, we got another poll question.
Yes, sir.
All right, Jimmy.
All right. A lazy social engineer will do which of the following? Is it A, send out hundreds of the same generic email? B, create a sense of urgency or sympathy? C, provide a link to unsubscribe, which may be malicious? Or D, all of the above?
Yeah, this lazy social engineering idea here is and really a lot of times now it's actual bots that are sending these out. It's not even somebody sets a bot up and it does it automatically. So This is not going to go away. It floods our inbox. It's super aggravating. But again, especially as we start to come up on our holiday season, you'll see a lot of these drive-bys that are talking about packages that need to be delivered, a lot from Amazon, a lot of things that are delayed. And if you think about it, the closer it gets to, for example, Christmas, the more you'll get package delays that are working right up to that to give that sense of urgency that, oh gosh, oh no, the toy that I ordered for my kid is not going to be here in time. Let me see where it's at and why it's not there. So another good thing there.
Yep. Yeah, so the answers here, these are good. Sometimes it is D, all the above. They could do any of these things. So really everyone is right on this one, because at least one of these is going to show up.
All right, so now I want to talk about a particular attacker that is what I call the patient a social engineer. This is the real deal. These are true con men, and they spend months, sometimes even years, preparing their attack. In most cases, they're always driven by some large reward or even a personal agenda. I don't like this particular company, and so I'm going to do this. The problem is that these attacks are really, really well thought out. There's always a really valid pretext, and the folks that are doing this normally have the personality skills to really make it successful. Here's kind of one of the things where things start to get a little bit scary. They do a lot of research into the board members of companies, into the C-suite personnel. They look for specific job titles. They'll do individual research on the company or on the person or even the company, basically by using social media. And Tyler alluded to that. It's so much easier now to actually get this information that makes this social engineer more real, more believable. Now, if you think about, their pretext is probably going to have something to do with their end game. So for financial institutions, is it going to be, wire transfers? Is it going to be account takeover? Is it going to be ransomware? For governmental agencies, is it going to be just ransomware? It could even be politically motivated. It can even target just individuals with some sort of extortion. So that patient social engineer is really going to be the one that we're very scared of. The point is, from looking at this type, anyone or any industry can be a target. So we've got a poll question kind of going into this, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the target, and that'll wind us up, for our webinar today when we get done with that.
All right. Poll question is: a patient social engineer works to, A, gather as much information as possible about a target, B, randomly calls numbers until reaching a lucrative target, C, sends an email with information specific to the recipient, D, both A and B, or E, both A and C. All right, and while those are, we're waiting on those responses, guys, we've had a couple of questions come in. One question and then one comment that I'll let you speak to. The first question is it safe to unsubscribe to emails?
My answer is no. Generally speaking, the unsubscribe feature will actually create a validation that you got the email.
Yes.
And
Yes.
subject you to more email.
Yeah, that's
now.
I think of the unsubscribe link in an email like answering the phone to a telemarketer. All it does is let the person on the other side of that know that you are in fact a real email address. So you'd want to instead use a spam filter or a third party service that's filtering that email for you instead of actually clicking on the unsub link. Yeah.
Yeah, I think doesn't Gmail now have an unsubscribe section on it, where I think it has some sort of a bot that will try to do that, but it doesn't actually give your email address to the unsubscribe portion. So so that Gmail does a good job, I think, with that. If you label something spam.
All right. Okay, we've got another a comment that's coming out. I'll let you guys speak to that. It says, another one I have seen a lot is that your emails that look legit, like saying, quote, your Netflix payment method is expired. Please click here to enter a new payment method. And seen the
Mm-hmm.
same with something like Amazon. You
Mm-hmm.
guys seen something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, those are
How we
those
gonna
are the
talk?
ones. Those are the ones that work the best, because we're not really getting into the psychology of how social engineering works on the webinar today, but creating a sense of urgency is a really big part of successfully phishing someone. Netflix may not, in 2020, Netflix actually probably is a little bit more important than it has been in the past, but most of the time you could see Netflix, you could see something like we've detected some strange activity on your Facebook account. Was this really you? Click here to tell us. Your automatic payment for your power bill got declined, stuff like that. Absolutely. That's where, and that's sort of rides the line between what we call lazy and patient. You can still just kind of mass email everybody because it's pretty it's almost a given that you're going to have a couple of accounts. It's almost a given that you'll have Facebook, almost a given that you'll have Netflix, stuff like that. But those can work as sort of non-targeted attacks, and then if you click on the link, it will go from there. So yeah, that's absolutely true.
I think the bottom line there is, I won't click on a link in an email. If it says something like that, I'll go directly to the site and log in directly from the site and see if it's expired or not.
Yeah, always, especially if it has something to do with an account of yours, always go directly to the place where you're logging in and log in yourself. Don't ever click through an email link.
Yep.
So yeah, we got some good answers. Now B here, the reason why we wouldn't consider B as part of patient social engineering is the random part. Most of the time a person who is trying to pull off a targeted attack is not going to call every number in the phone book until somebody picks up, although it's possible that is a strategy to get into what is then becomes a patient social engineering attempt or phishing attempt. But really, you'd be looking at somebody who's trying to gather as much information as possible about a target before they begin the attack, and then using that information to send a specific an email with that specific information to a recipient or target.
Good deal. Good deal. And speaking of targets, let's kind of move into that section. So one of the things we've been talking about is you obviously don't want to be a victim. You certainly are going to become a target at one time or the other. But being a victim is a little bit different. To fall victim, that social engineer is really requiring some type of cooperation from you. He's asking you to click on something. He's asking you to go to a website. He's actually asking you to respond to an email or provide some sort of information. So one of the things we want to stress here is it takes two to tango in this process. So a social engineering attack a lot of times can be a series of attacks to gather knowledge. Remember, the Abegnale story here and the Mitnick story really, showcase that. The idea that you've got to learn the lingo, so you've got to have some attacks to actually get that. Those are benign to the user, but they are actually first in those series. Dumpster diving today is really not very successful. anymore. Normally, there's not a lot to be gained by doing that. Normally, the manuals and the technical information are easily available on the internet. Sometimes, you might have some personal information that gets put into the dumpster that's not shredded. But generally speaking, dumpster diving is really doesn't give you the success rate that it used to. The attacker, remember, is going to be pretty well versed. This is the patient attacker, going to be pretty well versed in the lingo. So if you're in a bank, they're going to probably understand banking fairly well. If you're at an insurance company, the same. If you're at a hospital, the same. So they're going to take the time to actually understand the lingo and sound very believable. That is their goal. But again, they're going to have some kind of pretext. Either, a lot of times it may be to help you with your IT system. It may be, if they're using email and they don't actually have to be, a voice communication. They may act as a boss. They may act as a board member. Somebody from the C-suite. So they'll have some kind of a pretext, all along. Now, a lot of times the pretext will be simple. It'll be something like an email that's sent out to you that says, we're testing your password complexity. Please enter it into this website. That particular one is often used. And above all, there is no way that anybody should ever give their password to anyone for any reason. If an administrator or somebody needs to know your password, or they won't know your password, hopefully, but if they need to do something to your account, they can change and take over your account and do it. They do not need your password. Also the pretext may be simple, like we've been talking about, the package been delayed. Click here to see. Sometimes it's a whole lot more complex. Sometimes it's, we're performing network updates. Can you go to this site? This is a phone call. Can you go to this site and run a speed test? And you've clicked on the site. I always say, remember, when you click on something, you are asking the computer to execute a function. 99% of the time, you don't know that that function is all that it's executing. So another phone call may be, this is an IT support. We've got an alert from your workstation that it's been compromised. Can I have your password so I can change it immediately? There's that sense of urgency again. People make people scared. So it's a super difficult, thing to actually make yourself immune to. A lot of times these targets are for new employees. So it's super easy to actually get online and say, hey, let's look at this at Facebook and see who got a job at a bank. Super easy to do that. Just remember, victims can be anyone at any time. And hopefully now that you know this process, you'll actually understand it a lot better. Next time, we're going to be diving into some different types of social engineering and what their success rate is. So I hope you enjoyed this. Any questions, we'll try to answer.
Yeah, so we don't have any specific questions. We've had several kind of personal stories that have come through here, and I'm given the time here, I'm gonna pick a couple of these here that don't sound like they've been addressed as much through what you guys have talked about
Okay.
already. And we'll let you comment on that. So we had somebody who had they were called by their own cell phone number. And there was the call told them that their cell phone number was flagged for fraudulent activity, and they were asked to press 1 to reach a representative. This person said that they hung up and called the cell phone provider directly, and that they had nothing flagged on the cell phone number. So is that something?
Smart, very smart response. Absolutely. Tyler, can you speak to that a little bit? You're a little more up on the phone social engineering than I am.
Yeah, I mean, it likely was just a spoofed phone number. It's incredibly easy to pretend like a phone call is coming from any number. The fact that it was coming from your own phone number is probably not on purpose, but what they randomly generate a phone number that's similar to yours. Most of the time, it's the same area code, same first three numbers, and then something different for the last four. But and yeah, if it was coming from your own phone number, it wouldn't really show any activity at the phone provider. But yeah, that happens a lot. So that's a good point to make is if you get a phone call from someone who you think is suspicious or don't recognize, your best course of action. Then this applies to email too, but your best course of action is always to not respond and or hang up the phone, depending on the circumstance, and get in contact with somebody you do know and trust to be some kind of an authority in this situation. In this situation, it was it was obviously the phone company, and in a corporate situation, it might be the IT manager, someone you know that you can talk directly to. That's always a good idea.
Okay. All right, one more, and I think we'll wrap it up unless we see some more comments come in. It says in the tech space, there is an increase in SIM swapping schemes, such as which that don't require the quote two to tango. Are we seeing a lot of that, or are we making our clients aware of that?
Well, I'll address part one of that, and then I'll flip it over to Tyler. For SIM swapping, it does require some physical interaction with the victim. Or the victim's phone at least. So yeah, there is some physical interaction there to actually get that SIM swapped out. Tyler, you want to hit this one a little bit?
That's it's not super. We don't see it a lot in our practice. I don't see it a lot. And really the SIM cards are sort of going away. That's an older technology that's being replaced by hardware SIM cards built into the phone. The latest iPhone, the latest Samsung, they don't have SIM cards, I don't think. There's something because you can change it from one carrier to the other. So that's not as prevalent, but yes, that and it does require some physical component, but yes, that can happen.
All right. Next one here. I get a lot of text messages to confirm appointments. Are they safe?
Text messages to confirm appointment. Well, normally with a text message to confirm an appointment, is it safe? Probably. The worst thing that could happen is that your phone number is then put on a list, which it probably already is on. But I think what's important with those text messages is, does that make sense? Is that true? If you get a text message that says, "Hey, your dentist appointment is coming up tomorrow at 9 a.m." and you have no idea what they're talking about, same strategy as the first situation applies. You call the dentist and say, "Hey, this says I need to confirm my appointment. I don't think that I made one. Can we talk about this over the phone instead of through a text message?" But generally, yeah, I think that's to confirm an appointment that is accurate. I think that you can feel fairly confident in that.
All right. A lot of, I guess, personal stories that are coming out there. I don't see any that are real questions. A lot of interesting stories, things that are coming in. But I think we're going to go ahead and cut it off in the interest of time. We've already gone over a lot of time. We want to try to respect everybody's calendars and schedules today. Thank you so much for your time that you've given us coming out for our webinar today. Hopefully, you found this information informative and useful. We ask you to look up CRI on our social media channels. Go to our website, cricpa.com, and Facebook, Twitter, and so forth, all the social media outlets that we've got. Look for upcoming webcasts and webinars and things that we have coming in the next few months. We've got a lot of things packed in there. There's some tax stuff coming in over the next month or so, some tax planning items. And David has touched on again earlier about when we'll continue this series. But we've always got some interesting things there that our marketing folks have got going, and we encourage you to go to cricpa.com and catch our podcasts, and just come visit us. So we appreciate that. We appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you, David and Tyler, for putting this together. Thanks to our marketing folks, and thanks to all of you out there for spending an hour with us. And for those of you who've shared your stories with us on that, again, hopefully this has been beneficial. Everybody take care and have a great day.